What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from the altar again, and this time we return with Axel Rudi Pell. It is great to be able to talk with you. Thanks for coming back on the show.
Thanks for having me back.
Yeah, thank you, man. It's an honor to have you here. That was a great interview. I remember we were doing it in the very like heart of lockdown, so it was. I think it's fair to
Yeah,
say we're talking in much better times now.
that's right, exactly.
Yep.
Yes.
Yep. But your new album, The Ballads VI, is absolutely awesome, and really just as
Thank you.
good as Ballads V, 4, etc. But so far, for the first singles that we have, is that a good representation of what the entirety of Ballads VI is going to sound like, or is that just one little taste of it in a way?
I think that's one little taste of it because we have all the other ballads which I wrote, which are on the regular studio album. Of course, this time we recorded five new tracks. Normally we only have three new tracks for each ballad compilation, but this time we recorded five new tracks, two cover versions, two instrumentals, and one brand new song written by myself. And I love them all. What can I say? Yeah.
Yeah. Being that these are compilate, this is like a compilation series. Do you almost consider it like to be like a very secular or almost separate, um, uh, expressive aspect of you, as opposed to like what we would hear in like Diamonds Unlocked or Sign of the Times, and any of your solo work or the work you've done with Steeler? Is it a very different like creative frame of mind?
No, not really, because I always write songs. I don't sit down and say to myself, now I have to write five new ballads or anything. So it's just I'm writing all the time. Sometimes I have ballads, sometimes I have hard rocking tracks or whatever. Whatever comes to my mind, when the feeling is right in the air, the magic is there. So it's not a difference if I write a few ballads or if I write a few normal tracks, regular tracks. There's no difference at all. So it's not special. I mean, it takes me as long as I write a normal rock track. It takes me the same time to write a ballad. There's no difference. So
Mhm. Well,
emotions have to be there, of course.
well, it's funny. A while back, I interviewed the rock band Buckcherry, and they told
Yeah.
me that it's sometimes harder to play a slower song than a fast song because when you're playing a slower song live, you're more exposed. You won't be able to get away with screwing up a note as easy if you're playing like an aggressive fast song.
Of course, I mean, life it's a bit different than recording in the studio, exactly. But that's not the difference for me if I play a ballad live or I play a fast rocking track live. So that's no difference for me at all. So
Yeah.
yeah.
I always say that a ballad too, just calling something a ballad is kind of vague in a way because what does that mean? Is it like a love song or is it a song that's more melancholy and more rooted in grief? Is it a song that's more anthemic? Is there a specific emotion that needs to be channeled into a ballad in a way, or is it like a tempo? Like where is that sort of like threshold?
I think you have to get the melody is first. They have to get the melody right for a ballad, and you have to express something through the song. Sometimes it's a guitar melody, sometimes it's the melody of the vocal, but you have to express something. Of course, it's different from a regular rock track. You have to be in a special mood to write it and to listen to it. So, what was the first part of the question again?
That you answered it already. It was
Okay, okay.
yeah, yeah. Because I was wondering like because in the end, like I've always seen so many things called ballads. I've even seen songs that are more aggressive being called
Right.
ballads in a way because of like it goes slow at one part or it's more anthemic in a way. So I was always wondering if there is like a specific emotion that is channeled into making a ballad as opposed to it being many different emotions.
Yeah, yeah, of course. I mean, like I said, it's a very special, emotional one. It's more emotional than a regular track. But of course, when I write a regular rock track, I have to be in a special mood too. I can't put it on, press the button, and there you go. I have to get the arrangement right. The guitar riff has to fit perfectly to the melody lines of the vocals and vice versa. Whatever. So yeah.
With every album that you've created, is it always like a different approach? Is it a different mind frame every album that you create, or is there a usual method behind the madness that sort of applies to everything?
No, no, normally when I start writing songs for the next regular studio album, I start from scratch. I don't follow other songs with ideas which I had in the past. I'm always collecting little things. I'm always writing stuff. So, for example, when we finished the Last 23 record, the last real studio record, which came out, when did it came out? Last year, yeah. Uh, as soon as it was done in the studio, I closed the door, I went home, I put my gear back in place, you know, I put all the guitars, and I just played a little. I had two riffs coming up, which will already be for the next record, you know. So I'm always writing and collecting little stuff. Um, did I answer your question right now? No.
Yeah, yeah, you did. But like, what's funny is like, do you almost do ideas strike when you least expect it in a way, or do you have a usual place where you go to in order to cultivate ideas?
No, you know, I'm not collecting ideas in a special place. I'm not sitting down and write songs. What I do is I write every time. I write as soon as I pick up the guitar and something comes to my mind. I say, "Whoa, that's very interesting." I press the recording button on my cell phone, you know, the voice recorder, which records everything because 10 minutes later I would forget it. You know what I mean? So I'm collecting little piece and snippet, and I'm not sitting down and saying, "No, I have to write a new record," because then I have to be creative on pushing the button, and I can't do that. You know, I always can be creative when I'm not thinking about being creative, you know.
Mm.
Sometimes I'm at the grocery store and buy, I don't know, buy some meat or whatever. When a melody comes to my mind, I pick up my cell phone, it's in the melody directly into the cell phone. Sometimes the people working there around me look at strange me. What the fuck is he doing there? Singing there with his telephone? Oh, this is a weird guy. You know, it doesn't matter for me. So I'm always collecting. Then I sit down and put these little pieces and snippets together. That's usually it's around 3 or 4 months before we enter the studio. Then I sit down and make real songs of this lot of ideas. You know, I put them all together and it's working. Yeah.
Well, you know, I see plenty of people doing the same thing on their phone when I take the subway
Okay.
every day. So people may look at some of us strange, but always after doing these interviews and
Yeah.
and hearing people use their phones, I'm like, yep, I know what that guy's doing. I know, like, so it's easy to understand in that regard. But you mentioned that sometimes it's like 3 or 4 months before you go into the studio in a way. And I've always liked to ask this because when you work on a song for a long period of time, is it harder to sort of maintain the emotion that initially sparked the idea in a way? Do you like to sort of like finish a song feeling the same way as you did when you started?
You know, it's like it's nearly the same. You know, when I started, because when I started collecting the ideas, I don't have to be in a special mood. Sometimes when I pick a guitar, just like I said, a riff comes to my mind. Sometimes I pick a guitar and I say, "Whoa, oh, that's good," and I actually are recording it. But when I listen back to it a few months later, like I said, 4 or 5 months before I go to the studio, it's not every idea is cool. You know, I have plenty of ideas, like hundreds of them. You know, tons of them. And I go through it and I make my notes on a big sheet, you know, a piece of paper, so write down idea number 38 in F sharp minor, whatever. It sounds like crap, you know, don't use it anymore. And I go to the next idea. So I'm putting these little things together, but I don't have to be in a special mood to put all these things together. When I'm at this point, I feel like I have to work now. It's feeling great, you know, the baby gets together, all the different parts, you know. Yeah, it's working like that.
Well, I think we spoke last time too, and I asked about like a theoretical background.
Sorry that I'm smoking. Kid
Oh,
is at home.
uh,
It's not good for your health, but I don't.
hey,
Sorry.
I would join you right now, but in my apartment, smoking inside means a $5,000 fine from the fire department. So I ain't doing that. But we did talk about theory, and you mentioned like you do have the sort of theoretical idea, or you know a thing too. But in the end, this is rock and roll. In the end, so are you always thinking about theory in a way, or are you just breaking the rules all the time?
No, I'm always thinking about it. You know, rock and roll, of course. Sometimes it happens that I write a riff and I listen back to the riff and I say, "Oh, this is everything but hard rock." You know, so it doesn't. It's a complete different genre. Can I include it in my? Can I change it? Can I change the sound of it? And I'm thinking about, can I use it or not? Sometimes I'm using it and sometimes I say, no, 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 that's too poppy or whatever. You know, I put it away. So anyway.
Yeah. Well, I also wanted to ask you this because 2024, I think, is a special, like a landmark year in a way because it does mark. I think I'm terrible at counting. 40 or 50 years since the 1984 Steeler album, in a way, the self-titled record. And I was just gonna ask, what were some memories you have with the making of that particular album, and uh, and how has it evolved since then, putting out so many solo albums later?
Yeah. I remember that like it was 2 or 3 weeks ago. You know, everybody was so nervous. We got our first record contract. We went into the studio. We only had 8 days to record the record, mixing the record in 8 days, And we started and everybody was there, but the drummer, he didn't show up, and he was always the first to record. So we phoned him. He's still living in his parents' house. We called up, and his mom answered. Oh, he went to the hospital. He got so nervous, he got shaky, and he passed out. I say, what the fuck? Yeah, of course, it wasn't a strange thing, but anyway, he was a little crazy, that guy. He was so nervous, so then he passed out. So, but the next day we started with him, so he was okay then. But, and everybody was nervous. And the budget was very low, And I played a solo. I said, I don't like it. Play it again. No, we don't have the time for it. It's on a record. And I said, fuck you, motherfucker. But anyway, who cares?
Yeah.
It was a strange experience, but it was great. It was fun. I remember those days. Yeah.
Yeah, and it seems like that was a very creative time too, because you put out "Ruling the Earth" a year later and "Strike Back" a year later too. It seemed like the ideas were kind of like really flowing back then, right?
Yeah. Back in those days, I drank a lot of beer, and it helped. No, I'm kidding. No.
Hey.
No, we had 5 guys in the band, and 4 of the guys were songwriters, or maybe 3 of the guys. There was me, there was a singer, and there was another guitar player, and everybody wrote songs. Sometimes good, sometimes not so good. But anyway, who cares?
Yeah, and beer is. I've always said beer is the gear too. So, yep,
That's right.
Yep.
Yeah.
I was in a studio one time and I saw somebody carry they had their pedal case. So you had a Boss pedal, a beer, Boss pedal, beer. So it fit perfectly. So
okay, great.
And then when you put out because it seems like after you released Undercover Animal, you put out Wild Obsession, your first solo album, a year later after that. So it's fair to say the creativity never stopped, right? I mean, if you don't mind me asking, has there ever been a time where you had to overcome an artist block, or you had to sort of put down your instrument in order to recollect ideas, or was it always just a constant grind?
I remember one period when I changed, when I went to my small apartment where I used to live. I think it was in 2007. I used to the house, and I married my wife. There were so many things to do apart from the music, getting the furniture into the house, building the fucking everything. And it was really strange period. But I sat there. Of course, I recorded my little ideas and I put together a record. But I think this was the first record where I said, it's not 100% ARP. It's a little different. I think I forgot the name of the title. I forgot the title. What was the name of the record? Oh, Jesus Christ. Came out in 2008.
2008.
It was so bad I even...
Tales of the Crown?
Tales of the Crown, right. There were 2 or 3 songs which were really cool, but the rest is more, I don't know. I'm not sure. I'll never record it the same way again. So anyway, yeah.
Well, if you were to do a whole solo show and you have so many albums, and I'm pretty sure you would like to go all along the catalog from stuff of the Ballad series to your solo work, maybe even bust out a Steeler song or two. I'd imagine playing live, putting a set list together has got to be pretty difficult, right?
Jesus Christ, it's already it's every time it's the same because the people we played after the Corona thing. We played our first shows last year in September. They were great, played a lot of shows there. That was the first leg of the tour. It will continue at the end of this into May. This will be the second part. Anyway, the people were saying after the show, per email, they talked to us. They said the set list is great. Please don't change the set list for this tour. This is fucking unbelievable. This is great. But on the other hand, you have always a few people who are complaining. Why didn't you play that song? Why didn't you play that song? Because we can't leave out our classic songs like Masquerade Ball, Casper, like Rock the Nation, like Mystica. If we don't play it, the people will kill us, They expect it to be that we play. And it's always very strange. The back catalog, like you said, it's so huge. I would play myself. I would pick different songs. But I don't know if it's good for the audience.
Well, you have diehard fans, so I'd imagine that you'll always have that one or those couple fans who want a deep cut off of album that you totally forgot existed, or want that one deep cut off that demo or something that nobody even has a physical copy of or something like that.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But what can I do? What I'm doing is every time it's okay. But a few people are complaining, but I don't give a shit.
Yeah, you know what? Complaining is the easiest thing to do, but being a good guitar player, that's difficult. So.
Yeah, you got it, baby.
Yeah. Um, but like it's funny too because I think with your solo work I've seen such an evolution when you compare Wild's Obsession and then you fast forward to Shadow Zone or Mystica and then a Sign of the Times, which I spoke to you last time about. Was this always when you look at like the modern day Axel Rudi Pell and the modern day work and then you compare that to your previous work, was this always the vision of how you wanted to evolve? Was this always the vision on how you wanted future albums to sound like, or just
Yeah.
does it just kind of happen naturally in a way? You can't really have forethought on evolution.
I don't think much about how the record or the next record will sound before I start writing. I don't think about it. It could be probably, for example, there's always a ballad on an ARP record, but it could be that on the next record there will be no ballad at all. It depends on if the ideas I have, if they are great or not. If I don't have a great idea for a ballad, I'm not sitting there. I have to write a ballad now. I have to write. I don't do it. It comes naturally out of my mind. But the outcome always I love. From the last record, Lost 23, I think it was great. There was not one filling track on it, in my opinion. The one before, Sign of the Times, which was very good too, I think. But people say, it's not sounding like a Masquerade Ball again or whatever. Like this couple 25 or 30 years ago. I changed the direction a little bit, of course, because my personal taste is a little bit different than from that taste I had probably 30 years ago.
Yeah.
But anyway, yeah.
Is every solo and every riff that we hear in your work, whether it will be a ballad or a ballad or your fastest song, is that reflective of an emotion that you were feeling? Is it always coming from within, or does are there like external sources of inspiration that also guide your hand with how you play the guitar?
Well, I mean, sometimes when I write the greatest riffs I write, I have when I'm in a very good mood, when I'm really, really happy. Doesn't matter why, but when I'm really, really happy and I pick up the guitar, and sometimes I say, wow, this is fucking great, I'm recording it, and you can hear it. It can always, all my riffs comes from my heart, of course, and my soul. And I have to be in a very, very happy mood to write really cool riffs, yeah.
As somebody who's interviewed so many death metal bands and black metal bands and doom metal bands, and they always tell me they need to be pissed off all the time when they write it.
Yeah, I mean that's a different kind of music, a different kind of genre. Of course, you have to be very pissed. I can write death metal songs too. I'm really sure about it. I can, but I don't want to do it.
Please, I gotta hear what an Axel Rudi Pell death metal record would sound like. Oh man, you're in Germany. Some of the greatest death metal bands in the world are there. Get the Obscura guys.
No, I won't do
that. Yeah, I mean, never say never though. Has there ever been a time though where like music was as a means of catharsis to overcome a negative emotion? Has negativity ever fueled your creativity?
Sorry?
Yeah. Has negativity or like has there ever been a time where you needed to use the guitar as a means of catharsis? Has like maybe there ever been a time where sadness or anger maybe helped create the song, or do you always can you only write when you're in a good mood?
I think I'm only right when I'm in a good mood. Yeah. When I'm collecting ideas, of course, when I pick up the guitar, I'm not in a very good mood. I'm still collecting. See, this is cool. But when I listen back to it, I can feel it, and I say I wasn't in a very good mood because you can hear this is shit. I erase it. I don't want to use this riff again. Sorry.
And there was one like other technical question I have too, because like I'd imagine you've had to change the tuning over a couple of times, and I hear some of these obscure, F sharp minor 7 tunings, whatever, and like with like a 9-string guitar or whatever. But have you always had to has there always been have you always stuck with the same tuning throughout your career, or do you sometimes change it up here and there depending on what project you're working with?
No, I always, when we started out, we had the regular tuning. And but when we did the second stereo record, I think it was the second, everybody say, why don't you tune down half a step? Because it's easier for the singer to get a higher note. Say, hey, good thing. And like from this point on, I think it was 1985, we tuned down 1/2 step. It helps a lot. I mean, the strings are a little more, they're more loose, they're a little lower. But you can't tell the difference when you hear a guitar on stage. You can't tell if it's a G or if it's a F sharp major or whatever minor, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
You can't tell it by when you see it. When you look at the frets, you say, okay, it must be a G. No, it's not a G. It's an F sharp. what did you hear, but it doesn't matter.
Yeah. Well, when it comes to laying down a solo too, is it easier to come up with a solo when there's maybe like background music in a way, so you know what key to play in or what scale you're working off of, or
Of course. When I write, normally I'm writing a solo. I'm not improvising in the studio very much, and the solo has to have a structure for myself. It's very important to have a structure. Sometimes I have a melody part in the end or in the middle of the solo, which I write. Of course, I write before, and then of course it's very important which key is it. I can play easily. I can play on the E key or on the A key, but I don't write so much songs in A because it's too high for Johnny, for the singer. I know that, and I don't write songs in A, or maybe one or two during the past 20 years or whatever. But when I compose a solo, I of course I have to get the key to get the right notes on the guitar. It's different if you play a solo in E or you play in B, for example. Totally different fretboards.
yeah.
Yeah.
Of course. Well, I've always said that there's so many different. I feel like there's like because as a piano player, there's only one note with each note that you play. So it's not like I could bend the key on the piano. It almost seems like with the strings, and the way that you could bend it or you could hammer on differently. It almost seems like that there's an infinite, like millions of ways to just make one solo.
Right. Of course, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah, and
For me, the main important thing when I write a solo, that the emotion it needs to come out from my soul to my fingers to the guitar. That's a very important thing. I fucking care if I play 1 million notes in 1 minute or even only 3 or 5. The feeling has to be there, definitely.
of course. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time and
Thank you for your time.
yeah,
My pleasure.
yeah, just another awesome conversation. I'm glad we're talking when we're not in a lockdown this time.
It's all right. Yeah. That's great.
Is there just anything else that you'd like to promote with the Ballads VI coming out in terms of other tours coming, or what else we could be expecting from the Axel Rudi Pell camp?
And of course, when the tour will be over, I think it will be around the end of May this year. I'm going back to just pick up the guitar, play a little, collect more ideas, and I will start the writing for the next album around probably August, September. I will sit down and make real songs out of it. I'm sure that we'll be back in the studio at the end of this year, and the next real studio record after Lost 23 will be out in the spring next year. I can't tell you any date right now because I have to wait and see what the record company would say about that.
Fair enough. Well, thank you so much, everybody. Axel Rudi Pell. Be sure to check out the Ballads VI. This is Alex from Heavy New York. We will see you
It's a great record.
we will see you next time.